Hi, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Progress in Action. I know, second time today. Um, Getting really excited to do this, and I think I have another one coming up later today. So I'm really happy. I couldn't be more happy to have with me a great progressive activist, Jenna Beck from Orange County. Um, she is the chapter leader of Progressive Democrats of America in South Orange County. So, yeah, please introduce yourself and tell us how you're doing today.
Hi, yes. My name's Jenna Beck, and I am as he said, the chapter leader of Progressive Democrats of South Orange County. I've been hosting this chapter under that particular charter for a couple of years now. And prior to that, I also co-founded Our Revolution Southern California. So
Awesome.
yeah, I've been doing this for I've been doing political volunteer work for about 4 years, and this is what I do in my spare time.
That's fantastic. So it's interesting that you say in your spare time because a lot of people, when I talk to people who agree with me, and I tell them about being involved and getting involved in politics or in activism in general, they say, "Oh, I don't have time for that." And I try to explain that really you can be involved with in small ways with not as much time as you might think, or there's ways that you can do that you can really help organizations in there's ways that you can really help organizations without spending all of your free time. So what does it look like when you say in your spare time? How does that operate in your life?
Well, for me personally, it's probably a lot larger commitment than what it would be for a lot of other volunteers. But when we say in your spare time, or it's in your spare time, obviously, um, I normally have a day job. I've been affected by COVID too, so I was laid off, and I'm currently looking for work. And I've actually just got an offer like yesterday, so I'll be going. Yeah, I'll be going back to work, but what does that mean in your spare time? Making time to do volunteerism is it's a choice. It's allotting some of your time out of your day, and it's basically like saying, well, rather than watch a couple of hours of TV tonight, I would rather do a couple of hours of activities that would actually change the world. And you don't have to put in a lot of time, and there's a lot of ways that you can help. That I think that what it boils down to when people say I don't have the time for this, it's they think this does not sound like fun at all, right? Or it sounds scary. I don't know that I can really pick up the phone and call people, or I don't know that I can really knock on doors, or whatever it is. So it's a matter of personal preference rather than actual time management, I think.
Right, absolutely. So how what is fun, or what gets you to use your spare time in an activist sense, or in like what propels you to go out and make those phone calls, knock those doors?
Well, for me personally, it was twofold. The first reason that I started researching it and then getting involved was after Bernie Sanders did not advance out of the 2016 primary, and I was dissatisfied with what appeared to be a contrived process to get a Democratic nominee. And I just didn't, I wanted to learn more about it and understand why super delegates were able to impact the race so severely, and how politics worked, because it didn't make sense to me why that happened when it seemed that he had all the momentum and the people behind him. So I was mad, like a lot of people who supported Bernie Sanders. I was pretty mad.
I was pretty pissed. Yeah.
Right. And then I was even more mad when Trump won, and that the candidate that did advance out of the Democratic ticket was incapable of defeating him. So from that really lit a fire for me, where I was like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to find out how to do this and start getting involved. And that's kind of where my journey began. And it really was a matter of networking and learning, because it's complicated. One of the reasons that a lot of people can fall prey to conspiracy theories surrounding like the Democratic Party and stuff, and a lot of disillusionment around the Democratic Party, is they don't understand how it works. And it took me a long time to figure out how it works. And now that I know how it works, I have a whole new set of grievances.
Right.
An entire different set of grievances around how it works now. But at least now I have the intelligence where I can actually fight for change. And that's one of the things that I focus on. Is I followed Bernie Sanders' message of getting involved, transform the party from within, and run for office. Now, I don't want to be a public figure. I don't want to run for office. But I have tried to run for some party positions, and it's been a real challenge, and I haven't succeeded at that yet. However, I'm constantly, through the chapter that I run, I'm constantly involved in electoral activism, helping to elect progressive candidates, and progressive activism, like helping people within my community either get visibility, or to get donations, or to get volunteers, or whatever it is that I can do to assist other groups as well as candidates.
Okay, that's amazing. So you mentioned learning, or you mentioned why people are subject to conspiracy theories about the Democratic Party, and mostly because they don't understand why or how it works. What was one of the, as you got more familiar with the process, what was one of the misunderstandings that you had about the system that you learned what a more legitimate concern was, or how did getting involved in that in the system show you where you were wrong?
Well, the big one was what happened in the primary, because that's kind of what got me kicked off, right? And trying to understand why that was allowed to happen the way it happened. And it took me a while to wrap my head around this, that Bernie could have continued running. He could have just run as an independent. He had the right to run. He wasn't forced. He wasn't forced out. He made a choice that he would not challenge the Democratic ticket. He made that choice because he caucuses with the Democrats. So I think that's the first thing that people need to understand, is that it was his decision to drop out. But also, I didn't understand that we have a lot less influence in the primary than we think we do. We're getting better, though, because the smarter that we get, the more influence we get, right? So the reason they were able to have all those super delegates is because people weren't paying attention, right? So in what happened in the 2016 cycle, enough progressives were able to enter as DNC delegates to the convention that they were able to change some of the party bylaws and platform in order to make it a more fair process. Is it completely fair? Well, that's a matter of interpretation. And the reason that it is the way it is is because parties are basically private entities. And the ability to have a party is our right to assembly. That's our right to assembly. It doesn't actually affect your ability to run for president. It affects your ability as to whether or not people are going to organize and get behind you and provide you resources to run for president. So the parties themselves are private entities, and they operate somewhat, well, at least the Democrat, I don't know, I don't have enough knowledge about like the other parties, but the Democratic Party operates very much like a republic, where you elect delegates to the party in your community. And so by electing these delegates, they represent you, and you're trusting that they are going to vote in your interests. And because most people do not participate in this process, because it's not very well advertised either, it's not advertised, because people don't participate in the process, the more moneyed interested candidates are able to kind of sweep these delegate seats and have control over the party. So when Bernie is saying, enter and reform the Democratic Party, he's saying, we need to get these delegate seats. We have to get these delegate seats, because the only way that we change the party platform and the bylaws and the transparency of our elections and everything else is by being aware and participate. And even if you're not going to volunteer, at the very least, you should be voting in every single one of your assembly district delegate elections, every one of your central committee elections, because this is how we actually influence who is representing us at the party.
Right. And, you know, you often hear, especially from like the cynical people who don't participate, that their votes don't matter. And, you know, on a national presidential level, sometimes they have a point. You know, especially if you're in a state that's not a swing state. You know, your vote doesn't really influence all that much when it comes to the national level. But as you get more and more local, your vote matters more, because there's less people that are involved. And the less people involved means the more that your singular vote has sway over who's going to win. And who wins dictates every step that we take past that. So do you think that, what do you think the reason is that they don't advertise these delegate elections?
That could be a few. I mean, I can only speculate on this, but
right, of course.
Number one, I would say that they have a good thing going on here. Nobody knows it's happening, and so they get to control it, right? So the less people who are involved, the better it is for the people who actually gain the power by winning these seats, right? So if you don't show up and you don't participate and you don't vote in these processes, then you can't influence it at all. And so it's very easy for oil companies and charter school companies and you know the moneyed interests to put up a bunch of candidates and organize, because that's what you do. You start, you know, getting your people to vote in this process, and then you can get your people in. And that's very much what happens every single cycle. Usually what I've seen, at least in Orange County, what I've seen is that usually it is actual politicians who are organizing slates to get their slates of candidates in, because they want to get endorsed by the party. So it's very circular. And to my mind, that's a bit of conflict of interest, that you shouldn't be organizing and endorsing candidates to get these delegate seats, when those delegates will then in turn vote on whether you get endorsed for a race. But those party endorsements matter, especially when it comes to other organizations that partner with the Democratic Party, such as labor unions and various activist groups and things. When they party with the party and the party has made an endorsement, then there's a whole bunch of networking and relationships that they have to consider, and whether or not, we can't go against the party, right? There's a lot of relationships that get involved, and it's very circular, all of this, which is one of the reasons why it's so important that people like me continue to fight to get in the party so that we can influence and change and reform the party.
So essentially, people with a certain position or people with certain amounts of power are trying to maintain their position or grow their position. So therefore they keep the circle as limited as possible. And so as people who aren't in those positions, who are trying to get in to make changes that we either just 100% believe in ourselves, or we think beyond that our community believes in these issues, and trying to bring those back to our community, for us to break through, we have to widen that circle as much as possible. We have to bring as many new people in as we can. And the cool thing that I noticed when I was running for a delegate position in my community, I just moved here. I joined a progressive slate, and there was only 7 positions for people who identify as male, and I got in, I believe, either 11th or 12th place. And I had only been in the community for a few months because that circle has been kept so small, and that we were able to knock doors and bring out 30, 40 new people that almost swung a no-name person, somebody who had no name recognition within the community. I almost became a delegate just through bringing in those 30, 40 people from knocking doors. And, so if you're in the community with your friend base, you really do have a chance to break through. And if it's not you and it's a friend that's running for delegate, you can definitely get them in if you put in an hour a day calling your friends and telling them to vote for your best friend who's running for delegate, and telling them about the election, how they can get involved, and so on and so forth. So I think that it's really important that we participate in promoting these things and letting people know when these elections are, because most individuals, even, people who are really progressive and understand the issues, have no idea that these elections even exist. They don't know what a delegate is. And, so that it becomes our job to do that. And the fact that the elites or the people in power have made that circle so small, it makes it really easy to bring in a small group of new people to take it back over.
Right. Well, I mean, it depends. It depends on which district you're running in, I think.
Of course.
And there have been previous years where, like, for instance, actually a better position to go for is Central Committee. your county central committee rather than just assembly district delegate. The assembly district delegates are delegates to the CDP, California Democratic State Party Central Committee for the entire state. But if you go for your county central committee, you will more than likely not only be able to sit on your county central committee, but also be a delegate to the state as well. Because they usually are given more seats to the state party than they actually have members for. And not everybody wants to go because it can be expensive. There are ways to reduce your costs and make it a lot less expensive, but it can be expensive depending, right? And so not everybody wants to go. And so they end up giving some of their extra seats that they are allotted by the state party to the alternates to central committee. So there are lots of opportunities to get in through your county central committee. So the next elections for assembly district delegates are going to be in 2023, in January of 2023. So if that's something that you want to go for, you should start thinking about it and planning for it now, because
absolutely
it takes a while. Like you said, you came in 11th. I came in 9th. I ran independent. I've been having a hard time getting slate buddies, and I'm kind of in the position now where I just don't even feel like slates are really very ethical. So I don't even.
I've heard a lot of arguments for and against. In this last election, I ended up not running because the slate that I would be a part of filled their seats. And then when I was thinking of creating my own slate, there was not enough momentum to do so. And then all of a sudden, everybody started calling me from the slate that I would have been a part of to like not split the vote. And then there's, people from the slate that I wasn't really intending on going to. They were calling me like, oh, well, we have one seat open. We could really use you. And then they started talking about, possibly changing some of their slate positions in order to appeal to me. And I just ended up deciding, because of this infighting where like nobody on this slate would be allowed to endorse anybody from another slate, and all this like just unnecessary internal politics.
Mm-hmm.
It just I decided to endorse the people that I wanted to endorse from multiple slates, and I just said, all right, you guys go at it. I'm not going to get involved in this infighting.
I think that's probably the better approach, is to just because slates oftentimes include people who don't really believe in the same things that you believe in anyway. Right. I mean, I've seen pretty much every slate in Orange County has progressive in the title, and they're certainly not all progressives. It's kind of meaningless. It just waters down the word, and it just doesn't really mean anything anymore. But also, it's an in club. It's an in club. It's a voting block. And oftentimes they are set up to specifically support candidates. For example, when you look at the Progressive Delegates Network, every year they select their slates based on who they think they can get in that will vote for the chair candidate that they want to run. So this year they were trying to get Delane in, and it's unlikely that she won. She wrote what was essentially a concession on her Facebook page the other night. But there are so many other issues other than just trying to achieve the chair position. There's also participation in standing committees. There's, writing and presenting resolutions. There's whether or not you can get bylaws passed, bylaws changes passed there. And what I've seen in Orange County, because you did mention that you wanted to talk about how red it is down here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty red.
Yeah.
We're the anti-mask capital of the nation, really. And we've got Peggy Hall and like Oklahoma down here, and we've had several people picked up by the FBI for being at the insurrection. We have a lot of pretty hot red issues, and we did flip all of our congressional seats in 2018, but then we lost 2 of them in 2020. So we're still pretty purple, and we're working on that because we did achieve plurality for the Democratic Party. So we have the highest registration now, but we don't have majority, which means that there's still a lot of Republicans, and there's a lot of no party preference voters in Orange County. So point being is that it's not just about a lot of these slates are put together with a singular goal of electing a single candidate.
Right.
And there's so much more to party participation than that. And what we have been seeing is that when it comes to pre-endorsing conferences, the things that these delegates are actually supposed to participate in, they only show, many of them, not all of them, but there are quite a few that end up getting on these slates that end up showing up to the conventions and to the pre-endorsing committees and stuff for the sole purpose of voting on that one endorsement and not participating in other things. And then that's also why the conventions end up being a huge party environment, because they only have the one goal in mind and they don't really care about anything else.
Right. So if you were to run without a slate or create a slate where the intent is to be more involved than just a one vote or one issue run, what strategies do you think work best to bring people in to vote for you who otherwise either have no idea that this is going on or have no interest?
Well, this is one of the reasons that I said that even though the next one is in 2023, if this is something that you want to do, you need to start working on it right now, because the most likely voters are going to be the people who go to Democratic clubs. And so if you want to get elected to assembly district delegate or even to central committee is, you need a much larger amount of people to vote for you. But assembly district delegate, you probably, at this rate, with how hot politics are right now, you need at least a couple hundred votes, probably more. You probably need somewhere between 300 and 500 votes to get in. And the best way to get those votes is to attend every single Democratic club within your district and get to know every single one of these volunteers who are showing up to those clubs. Because if they like you, they'll vote for you.
And it's important to join into these Democratic clubs for more than just, trying to get elected. The fact of you being there at these meetings, you can have a lot of influence in how the club operates on a wide variety of things. And then you develop relationships that can help you achieve any number of goals.
Absolutely. You can run for positions within the clubs. You could be on their leadership team. And by the way, for those of you who are also like, well, this sounds kind of boring and everything, if you have career goals, being able to say that you were chair of a Democratic club actually looks good on a resume, depending on what you're applying for, of course.
Right.
But having leadership positions is helpful. This is one of the things that came up for me with the association. I'm a proposal manager by trade. And for years, I've been participating in the Association of Proposal Management Professionals. The former chair of the national APMP gave us a speech and said straight up that she was hitting the glass ceiling. She couldn't get the C-level job she wanted. So by taking the chair position within national APMP and national organization, she was able to put that on her resume, that she was the chair of a national organization of professionals. These things actually do make a difference.
And they're huge networking opportunities on top of that. You
Yes.
Meet people who are from all walks of life who have, if you're looking for work in a specific field, you never know who you'll meet at a Democratic club who can either vouch for you when you apply or actually just directly hire you because they're in a position to do so. When I joined the Progressive Democrats of the Antelope Valley Club, I was looking for work because, again, I was new to the community. And I got about 3 different job offers just from attending the club meetings. So there's a lot of benefits to getting involved in your local Democratic clubs, aside from just seeking election or influencing your local politics. There's things that can just help your career or help you expand a friend group. It really is beneficial to be as involved as possible. And these clubs don't take all that much time out of your life. They're a couple hours a month, and the benefits are exponential. So I did want to get into what it's like in a red district to organize and to be an activist. And as you said, Orange County is becoming more purple, but it's still a very there's still a hotbed of Republican influence and politicians and just in the community in general. What's it like knocking doors for a progressive candidate or a left-wing candidate in a purple or a red district?
I've knocked throughout various parts of South Orange County and North Orange County too. And first of all, when they are putting together their the field directors, when they're
right,
it's called cutting turf, right? They're cutting turf. They're creating a universe of voters that we're going to approach. We're not knocking on every single door. We have a strategic approach to how we do this. So most of the people are either not home, so we just leave some literature for them, or just they are slightly more receptive than if we were, say, like a traveling salesman or something, right?
Right.
And then there's like maybe 5% are actually hostile, right? And they don't usually get very hostile until we get closer and closer to the election, where they've already their door's been knocked on like 5 times or something. I was knocking in Georgia. I flew out to Georgia to flip the Senate, and we knocked on their doors so many times. Like there was like 5 pieces of literature on the door by the time I'm knocking on that door. And so some of the folks were starting to get hostile with us getting closer to the election, but and they would yell at us and stuff. But oftentimes what I would tell them is that we had a call with Stacey Abrams a couple days ago, which this did happen. She spoke to our group, and she told us that you're not used to having your doors knocked on because you haven't really been a swing state before. And she said you're going to be irritated, but she told us to please irritate you and make sure that you show up and vote, please. So it really depends on your approach and how you talk to people. And I in the South, they really want you to talk to them for a long time. They want they want to have some conversations, right?
Whereas, because they're trying to build a community.
Well, it's mannerisms. It's just they feel in the folks that live in the South, it is politeness to have that conversation with them and spend some time with them. But in Orange County, we're kind of like, we want to get in, we want to get out, right? Like, we're like, okay, I get it. Give me your literature. I'll think about it, and you just get in and get out. But so you have to definitely be faster in making a connection in Orange County than you do in the South. In the South, you just have to take your time, be patient, smile, be polite, but in Orange County, you got to get in and get out. I didn't really have, I've only run into a few people that made me a bit nervous, so you always want to walk in pairs, I've only met like maybe less than 6 over the years that made me really nervous. But I have been followed by Republican trackers while I've been out in the field. And so for those of you who don't know what that is, the trackers get hired by opposition campaigns to try and dig up dirt that they will use against your candidate. So one of the times I was followed by a tracker, I was Jackson Hinkle used to be a Democrat. Now he's like People's Party or some junk. but in 2018, he was running as a Democrat and for city. I mean, technically, you don't have to put a letter next to your name, but he was endorsed by the Democratic Party, right? And
right.
He was running for city council in San Clemente, and I walked blocks with him. And we knocked on every door because he didn't have to put a D next to his name. And we were actually just doing lit drops. We weren't even really knocking. We were just like doing a lit drop is when you just put the door hanger on the door and you go.
Right.
I think they hit like between him and Jake, who was his running mate, I think they ended up hitting like 10,000 doors down there. So I was walking with him, and at the end of the session, it was a shift basically. A man came by in a pickup truck. He stuck his phone out the window and started recording us and said that he was from Europe or something. And he was like sending the video to a friend of his in Europe. And we just kind of raised our eyebrows and we're like, whatever. And so I started walking to my car. Dude followed me. He didn't follow the candidates. He followed me to my car. So yeah, that tracker was after me. And the next day, Jackson told me that somebody showed up in like one of the local San Clemente Facebook groups and accused him of having out of town canvassers come in. Well, yeah, I live in Aliso Viejo. I'm like 15 minutes from him. I'm 15 minutes north.
Right. Wow.
And that's what they do. They spin things. They just take ridiculous nonsense and they spin it out of control.
Yeah, of course. That's politics for you.
Exactly.
So if somebody, despite possible right-wing trackers following you around, if somebody wants to support a candidate and either knock doors, or they don't even have to necessarily do that, there's phone banking and things you can do where you're not putting yourself out in the public as much. So whatever you're comfortable with, there are other ways of helping your candidate. But how does somebody get involved? How does somebody do that? How do they like, do you look up, their number and give the office a call? How does somebody end up volunteering for a campaign?
Well, the first and best option is to go directly to the candidate's website and sign up as a volunteer. Now, that being said, a lot of candidates don't have a lot of money, so they can't, not all of them have enough resources to manage all of the interest of everybody who wants to volunteer for that campaign. And I've seen that happen before. So your second best bet, if you're not getting a response back from the campaign because maybe they're too overwhelmed by the response, the next best bet is to look at who has endorsed your candidate that you want to support. So for instance, if there's a candidate running in Orange County, but their field or operation is a little behind in getting back to everybody who wanted to register as a volunteer. Mm-hmm. The next thing to do is to check, did the Democratic Party of Orange County endorse that candidate? Because if DPOC endorsed the candidate, then you can then volunteer for DPOC because they probably have an operation going on. And if they don't have an operation going on, then you look at something like PDA South OC or Our Revolution. Is there another organization that's endorsed them? Is there a union that's endorsed them? Because sometimes we have like the firefighter unions and the labor unions and everything else that have also endorsed, and they also have volunteer opportunities. And sometimes they even have contract opportunities. For example, when I went to Georgia, I was there with what was called the Workers Power PAC, I think is what it was called. And it was a PAC formed from Unite Here, which they have chapters throughout the country. And they've been sending field workers in to knock on doors, people who are skilled organizers who know how to do it.
Wow, that's amazing. So, and from my experience, the first time I ever got involved in a campaign, I was 17 and I joined the Young Democrats of America, the YDA. And they were doing door knocking and volunteer work. This was in 2008 for Barack Obama. And then the next year, or the next election 2 years later, I lost my contacts and I wasn't even necessarily looking at volunteering, but I was looking for work. And I ended up happening to stumble across the office for, this was up in Northern California, but it was for Jerry McNerney's congressional campaign. And I was like, hey, I worked on, I handed out his literature 2 years ago. So I went in there and I asked them, hey, do you have any job positions? And next thing you know, I'm an intern for the Jerry McNerney for Congress campaign. So there's a lot of ways to get involved. And if you're not getting a response through any of these organizations online, at least it worked for me. Show up. Just, walk into their office. What are they going to do? Tell you to go away? And I think really at the end of the day, if you want to get involved and you want to make a difference, there are so many ways that you can. And if you are clear and you tell them like, hey, I want to volunteer, but I don't want to be in public. I don't want to knock doors and I don't want to walk around. I just want to be on the phones, they're not going to tell you to go away. They'll put you on the phones. Or, if you have a specific set of skills and you say, this is what I want to do for you guys, this is my experience, 9 times out of 10, they'll use you for your experience. They're not going to force you to do things you don't want to do because they're not paying you. So they know you'll just stop. So they want to use you for whatever you're willing to do. So please don't be discouraged. Get out there and participate and look at their website or find one of their offices, one of their campaign offices, and just show up. So when you're talking to people in public or you're at community events, in an area that has a lot of Republican influence, do you find, how is it best to engage with just the general public when you have no idea who the majority of any singular group is? Do you think that it's best to be clear about your political intent, or do you try to approach it by bringing up general concepts? How do you go about communicating with the public?
Well, as I talked a little bit about the universe, right, and how they're selecting the doors that we knock on to be the most likely people who would actually support the candidate. But I think that's even more important now than it has been in the past because of today's political climate and how very angry a lot of the Trump voters are and how disillusioned they are and the potential that they're not completely thinking straight and that they're believing in conspiracy theories, and they think that the Democratic Party are like lizard people or something. There's a lot going on right now. So
yeah, I've been in conversations with a few of them, and my God.
Yeah, so there's definitely some messaging challenges, and so it has to be, each campaign is going to be different. And the number one thing is sticking to the issues that matter to the district, talking about what matters to them. So, for instance, in Orange County, we've had a 2,000% increase in hate crimes. So we would, if you're going to be knocking on doors, you're going to select your universe very quickly. Very carefully. And, we just got Katrina Foley in as Board of Supervisors. So there is a sizable section of the district that she represents that covers, I think, Little Saigon and, a large section of our AAPI community. We have Orange County has the largest AAPI community in the country.
Wow.
Third, I'm sorry. I said that right. I said third. We're the third largest.
Oh, okay. You said largest, but we'll take third.
I'm third. We're third largest, not first. We're not first. Probably San Francisco or LA beats us there, but we're third. We're third. Obviously, this rise in hate crimes, and it has been predominantly targeted at the AAPI community, although another interesting statistic is that only 2% of our population in Orange County is Black. And there's been a huge rise in hate crimes against the Black population too. And there's such a tiny portion of our population that's really scary as well. But we've had situations down here where, like for instance, in Ladera Ranch, there are neighbors guarding a family around the clock because they've been getting harassed by teenagers from MAGA families who are, trying to vandalize their home at night and do things to them and yell things at them. So when you have a situation like that, that has been brewing and getting worse and worse over Trump's term. And now it's like, how do we even de-escalate it? You have to be very careful about how you knock on doors and what subjects you bring up and how we end up flipping these seats. But we were very fortunate. Katrina is now our second Democrat that we have on the current board, but she is the first Democrat in 125 years to hold that particular district.
Wow.
So it was a big victory for us.
That's amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah.
What a success. So you were personally involved in that campaign?
I was signing up to do the phone banking, and then I tapered off. But I gave her a lot of. I worked more on trying to recruit volunteers to her phone bank and push out her social media.
Absolutely. I was just asking that because I was wondering, I mean, was there anything that you learned from that campaign? I mean, to have a success like that, I mean, the first victory or the first Democrats in you said 125 years.
Right.
Was there anything that you noticed about her campaign that was different than other campaigns that may have failed?
Well, what I noticed, because I've seen Katrina run in the past too, and I've seen other politicians run within the same sort of regional area, and I think what she really did right for this particular campaign, she by the way was the mayor of Costa Mesa, so okay. She already had name recognition in the district, but I think what she really did right is that she stuck to positive messaging. And talking about COVID relief and the things that mattered in the district, like talking about solving problems in the district.
So, and she ran before, right?
Not for that particular. She was the sitting mayor at the time that she was running.
Right.
And prior to that, she had run for state senate, which Dave Min won that seat. So the difference is that when she ran for state senate, they did, well, I don't know how much Dave did necessarily, but Katrina's campaign did go a bit negative towards Dave. And that was two Democrats trying to advance up. I think that strategy did not. Obviously, it didn't. She didn't advance out of the primary. And so it ended up being Dave against a Republican in the general election. But I think that was the clear lesson, is that the more positive, especially for Democrats, right? For Democrat messaging, you have to have uplifting, hopeful, we're going to solve problems. This is how we're going to get it done. Whereas Republicans play in fear and hate. We're going to demonize people, and we're going to.
This is what they're going to do to you.
Exactly. It's very much like a whole selfish mentality of making everybody just, we're not gonna let these immigrants come in and take your jobs, and all the bullshit.
Right. Or the Democrats are sending X to do X, and
right. They're ruining your family values.
Yeah, or destroy your churches.
Right.
So essentially, positive messaging, explaining, solutions to local problems, keeping your conversations as much about the community and as much about what's going to impact people's lives directly. These are the things that help Democrats win in areas that have an overwhelming previous Republican influence. But even if you run for office for some position and you lose, it's really important that you don't see, just because you lost the election, that doesn't mean you've lost everything. All the work that you did in that election can still be utilized as name recognition. You've built relationships with people. You have now have an understanding of certain issues that you didn't have before you started running. And this can propel you to either run for that same office again and do even better, or run for a different office in the same area and do better in those elections. So just because you've lost once or twice, maybe if you've lost like 6 or 7 times, it's time to hang up the towel. But just because you've lost a few times doesn't mean you should give up, especially if you're supporting values that, especially if your objective is to truly help individuals that are in marginalized and the least of these, people that are less privileged than you. So are there any influences that you've had other than Bernie Sanders on the political scene that have given you courage when you've had a rough day out knocking on doors, or you have a rough day in your life and you're just not wanting to do activism today, and you're just tired and done? Or is there a phrase, is there a person, is there a speech that speaks to you?
There are several activists, organizers, leaders who I look to and I admire, and I think that is, there's so much negative to be said about social media and what it's done to us, but I think that's one of the real positives of social media, is that I'm able to check in real quickly on what's going on with everybody else. And there are some people who have been very inspiring to me over the last few years. Not only my own family, but I'd say Melanie Nowlin, and from South Carolina. She's been an organizer for the Bernie Sanders campaign and for Jamie Harrison, and for the state party. If Mondale Robinson and Marcus Farrell, who are organizers in Atlanta, Georgia, and have been working to get on the Black Male Voter Project. People like Jay Ponte, who's one of the early organizers for the progressive movement, and is constantly putting out some really deep thoughts. My party chair, Ada Preseno, who is the co-president for Unite Here Local 11, and she's a national spokesperson for Medicare for All, and she was a surrogate for the Bernie campaign last year.
Wow.
Dr. Bill Honigman, who is the national, I think, director for, I don't know if I'm getting your title right, Dr. Bill, but I think it's like National Director for Healthcare for Progressive Democrats of America, and he's also the California State Coordinator, and he leads our Orange County chapter. I have South OC. He has all of OC. And I could drop tons of names. I bet. There are a lot of people who inspire me every day for the work that they do and their dedication to the movement. And, I've been a sales professional for like 22 years. And so there might be a little bit of a competitive edge to me where I'm like, well, if they're doing that much, I better be doing that much.
Right.
So it does inspire me to do as much as I possibly can. looking at all,
A
you know,
healthy
everything around me.
a healthy competitive spirit is exceedingly valuable, even if you are a lefty and you know, either a socialist or a progressive in general. It's okay to be competitive, and it's okay to use other people's success to say, you know what, I can do more than them. Like that's always good. It's always good to be driven.
Exactly.
So, you know, and if you surround yourself with people that are constantly pushing you and constantly causing you to feel more driven, you'll do things that, you know, 2 weeks before you thought you had no chance of ever even slightly doing. And, you know, next thing you know, 6 months, a year down the road, you're in a position and you look back and you're like, wow, this is incredible. So absolutely let that competitive spirit push you forward. Um, Thank you so much, Jenna. This has been an amazing conversation, and I hope people listening um, take some of the overarching wisdom that you've shared with us to heart. And I think that I really hope that they start learning and thinking about some of the small scale, for lack of a better word, the minutia of the Democratic Party and politics in general, and see if they can start getting involved in one way or another. You Anybody can do it. Some people do it better than others, but everybody can get involved. Everybody can help, and every second counts. So thank you so much to everyone who's watched and listened to this stream. I really appreciate you. If you can like, share, subscribe, do all the stuff that makes our algorithm go up and increases the amount of subscribers and followers we have. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great rest of your evening. Goodbye, everybody.